In this video, I'm going to show you how to create video like MP4 file using code. It's called remocn, cinematic video components, now copy pastable. Let's take a look. This is video, and did you know that create this video now you can use code? Let's take a look. For example, this one right here. This video on the right side is basically code from the left side, right? And another example like this one right here, cloud code. Then social media things right here, right? The text, the confetti, and the transition in here. That's a lot of things. Let me try to open the component so you can see a lot of component in here, like typography, right? There's a lot of things like this one in here. I'm gonna open that for you guys so you can see that. Then also you can see this environment and lighting, dynamic grid. Pretty cool, right? Then also we have the UI blocks in here, like the terminal simulator. Pretty cool. I love that. Then the AI stuff, like the cloud chat in here. You can create video like this, like really cool. You can change the text, whatever you want to change, it works. The color, whatever, right? The ChatGPT style in here, the V0, the cloud code, the open code. A lot of things like the transition. Also, you can just select whatever you want, the social media stuff, right? This GitHub star, as you can see. So nice to see, right? So basically in this video, we're gonna try to create some example like this bar chart demo, for example, as you can see. So anyway, I also show you how to get the data from the API. As you can see here, if I refresh, we get a new data, right? It's different chart. And also create this terminal, as you can see. And also I'm going to show you how to export that as a MP4 file. As you can see in here, we have the out, that some of the example output that I try in this video. Let me try to see the bar chart demo. As you can see, this is the MP4 file, guys. That's a lot of things, right? So that's what we're going to learn in this video. So let's try to learn together. First, I'm going to go to the docs in here, then go to the instructions. Let's take a look. First, we have to running this npx create dash video at lattice. Then I'm going to give a name remocn dash review. So I'm going to hit enter. Then as you can see here, we can basically select the template, like a blank template, the hello world, the Next.js, and etc. There's a lot of template in here, even TikTok, as you can see, right? So I'm going to use the Next.js, this SaaS template for video generation applications. I'm going to hit enter. Then add agent skill, I'm going to also do yes. I'm going to install that to my open code. So I'm going to hit enter. And also for the installation scope, I just want to install that on this specific project. You can do on the global as well if you want. Then I'm going to say symlink, right? This is the recommended things. Then I'm going to say yes. Great. So now I can see it to the remocn review. Then I'm going to open that on Visual Studio Code. First, we need to install all the dependencies. So just running npm install. There's a lot of things like remocn builder, remocn CLI. Then we have React DOM, remocn tablet merge. Then also the dev dependency, we have a lot of things, right? All right, this is done. So as you can see, we have this node modules folder with all the modules that we need for this project. And also we already installed skill, right? And as you can see, we have this open code, then skill, then remocn best practices, and all the rules in here, like a 3D, like audio visualization, local fonts, and a lot of things, right? So we can use that basically. So next, what we have to do is just running the npm run dev. All right, guys, so let's take a look. This is basically the default template of the remocn. As you can see, we have this video by default. We have this logo, then also render the text. Super clean, super nice. And also we can play, we can pause, we can mute the audio, etc. So let's take a look at the code. I just want to open the source, and then app, then page.tsx. So in here, basically, just pretty simple, just render a div and also render the player. So player is basically component from the remocn/player, right? This basically come from the package. And also there's a lot of props in here, right? Like for example, this component, main, input props, and etc. So let's take a look at this control, right? The controls by default is true, autoplay by default is true. Of course, we can setting that to false maybe, and also the loop, I can setting that to false. And of course, right now, it's not going to autoplay every time I reload. Then also after the video done, and it's not going to be autoplay again because the loop is false. So anyway, Now let's try to click the render video. Then as you can see, we get this error. So after I take a look on the package.json file, basically we have this script, then we have the render, right? So we can running this remocn render. Let's go back to the terminals. Then in here, I'm going to run that npm run render. So basically I'm not yet upgrade my Mac OS, so I get this warning, but I hope this is working. This is just downloading the Chrome headless shell, etc. Then for the composition, of course, I'm gonna select my component, then hit enter. Let's take a look. We should see out folder. Let's see right here. Then we have this my component mp4. Pretty nice. So I'm going to open that, refill in Finder. Then let's try to play that video. As you can see, guys, it works. This is basically real video. So let's go back to documentation. Then I just want to try to see some component that we can try. The UI blocks, there's a lot of things right here, basically like at this terminal right here. That's super cool, right? You can just render that as a video, then you can putting that on the website, for example, whatever you want to do. Like this data system, right? This animated chart. Super cool. I like to try this one. So basically we can just copy the prompt in here or using npm, or you can use yarn, npm, whatever you want to do. So I like to using the prompt in here, just copy that, go back, then open my open code, then paste that, right? Add the remocn/animated bar chart component to my project. Then hit enter. So let's take a look. So anyway, I get this question from the AI. Can I initialize setcn and add the remocn animated bar chart component to your project? Of course, I'm gonna say yes, proceed. All right, this is done. So let's take a look what we get. So normally what we get is basically, we'll create the component animate bar chart on the remocn animate bar chart components folder. Let's take a look. Components, then we have this remocn and then animate bar chart, right? This is the component basically. All right, cool. Then the way we running that is on the root, right? On the source, then root.ts. It's basically, I believe it should be the remocn, then root, this one right here. So in here on the remocn root, we have to running this one right here, the composition, then put the ID, animate bar chart, then put the component, then the duration, FPS, then etc. So that's the way we render that on the browser. Anyway, I'm going to run this prompt, create a new composition in root.tsx called a bar chart demo that show this chart with a dark backdrop using dummy data, this one right here, and add a title above the chart using the remocn per character rise text component, make it 90 frames, and then go back to my open code, then just paste it. All right, this is done. So let's take a look. Basically, we have new file on the source remocn bar chart demo / bar chart demo.tsx. So let's try to open that, this bar chart demo. Let's try to see what we get. Then as you can see, it is basically the component, and then we have the backdrop in here, the absolute fill. Then also finally down here, we have the animate bar chart. This is basically like you see on the example. Let me try to see here, right? They just render this one with data and bar color. But in here we have some other props like a width and height and gap and stager frame, right? So now how that we can render the bar chart demo on the UI, because now as you can see on the UI, we still see this main. This main is basically come from the my components /main, right? This is just render right now. So we have to basically update the page.tsx on the source app right here, because now what render on the player is just main. So we need to render the bar chart demo. So we can do that on the terminal. So let's just try to run this prompt. Please render bar chart demo as a video in the page. All right, this is done. Let's take a look. I'm going to close this terminal. Then as you can see on the page.tsx, basically we have we have two players right now. First is this player that basically render the main, which is from the template default. Then down here we have this player that render the bar chart demo. I'm going to try to play that. Then here we go. Look really nice, right? We have the text on the top, then also we have the chart right here. Then of course we can export that as a video. Let's try. So let's try to running the npm run render, and I hope this is working. Then as you can see guys, we get an error. Basically the module not found error cannot resolve this add slash components remocn animate a bar chart. So let's try to fix this issue. I'm going to go back in here. Then this is basically my prompt that I'm going to try to use to fix this problem. Remocn render cannot resolve the add slash import alias used by remocn component. I get module not found, then etc. Right. So I'm going to copy all of that, then running that on the open code like this. All right, this is done. So let's take a look. What was fixed is basically this added a webpack resolve alias in source remocn webpack override.mjs. So remocn builder map add slash to the source slash directory, matching the tsconfig.json path already in place. Great, so everything should be works right now. So let's try to do that again. npm run render. Then let's take a look, the bundle code. Then as you can see, we have the composition in here. Basically we have 3 right now. Then I'm going to render the bar chart demo, then hit enter. Let's take a look. Now we should see the output, then bar chart demo in here, right? This is the video. Then I can play. Look at that. Really cool, super nice. How if I want to get the data from the API, for example, right? The data in here from the API. Basically, this URL will give us like a egg random number. As you can see, every time I refresh, it should be get new number. So I'm going to use that. So my prompt is basically this one: fetch egg random numbers from this free API and use them as the chart data instead of dummy array. So this is basically the URL. It return plain text, 1 number per line, parse it into a number array, then etc. Right? So let's try here. I'm gonna go back, then I'm gonna paste that here, then hit enter, and hopefully now it basically will update the bar chart demo and change this dummy data from the real data from the API. So let's take a look how the fetch will be happen here. All right, this is done. So let's take a look what the AI doing. It's basically do the web fetch in the URL, then get the random data and then render that as a dummy data. That's not what I want basically. So I'm going to using this prompt. The bar chart data is currently hard-coded from one-time fetch. I need it actually be live. Don't hard-code any number. So I just want to try to see how the fetch happened on this bar chart demo. All right, this is done. So let's take a look what we get. What changed right now is the bar chart demo. This is basically will accept data as a props via the Zod schema, not hard-code values, and the root.tsx and then also the page.tsx. Player fetch from the random.org. So the fetch it's happened on the page, this one in here. So let's take a look. Yeah, this happened on the use effect basically. So of course it's basically will change the value every time I refresh, right? Remember this chart, right? Then now I'm going to try to refresh that browser, then play that again. As you can see, now it's changed, right? Let's try to do that again. Play. It also changed the chart. Really nice. So basically the data is come from the API. There's a lot of other component that's pretty cool that you can just try. Let's try to use this terminal simulator for the next demo. So this is basically the prompt: add the remocn terminal simulator component to my project. Then I'm gonna try to use this prompt. Then create a new composition in root.tsx called terminal demo using dummy content, then update the home page so I can switch the player to show this terminal demo composition instead of main. So I'm going to copy that, then go back to my open code, then try to run it. All right, this is done. Let's take a look at the result. And as you can see on the top in here, we have the tab. Then also we have this terminal, right? Pretty cool. So we can just play that like this. Then as you can see, right? This is a video. Of course, we can export that as an MP4. Let's go back in here, try to export it. Here, I'm going to running the npm run and then build, not build, but render. Then now we can select any composition that we need to render. I'm going to select this terminal demo, hit enter. Then now we should see this terminal demo on the output. This is the MP4, right?